I know what caused that horrific school fire so many years ago. The scars have faded with the passage of years and clever plastic surgery. With proper makeup and lighting, you can barely tell they're there. But in the full direct light of my bedroom, I can see them clearly in the mirror, spread across my face and body, bumpy and crimson and just plain weird. I am the lucky one who survived that horrific school fire. Or maybe the creature remembered that it was I, after all, who saved it from the nasty muddy wetness that was dragging it down, and a possible horrible death from being stomped by some random kid, and somehow engineered my escape. I don't know, I was unconscious from the smoke at the time. Oh yes, I still have permanent lung damage, wheezing like an 80-year-old if I even slightly exert myself. Let me tell you the story from the beginning, and you can decide. It began on a gleaming wet fall morning over 20 years ago as I walked miserably to school. There was no real reason I was miserable. I hated school with a passion that made my heart ache, but there was no reason. I wasn't bullied, I had some friends, my grades were fine. I didn't have the words to explain the loathing I felt for the building, the smell, the sounds, the actions, and so I didn't try. Everyone else seemed cheerful enough. It had rained heavily overnight, but now the sun was shining, making the puddles gorgeously dazzle. Kids jumped noisily into the puddles, shrieking with excitement. I skirted them carefully. And that's when I saw it, almost completely buried in a pile of soggy leaves, tinted all the hues of late autumn. Only its head was poking out, its eyes shining right at me, a damp puff of smoke hanging around its delicate snout. Instinctively, I knelt and scooped it up in my arms. It was as big as a pigeon. It flapped its wings irritably. Its mouth opened and I heard it right in my brain, very clearly. I did not give you permission to pick me up. I was not in the mood to take shit from a telepathic pigeon-sized creature. A gaggle of loud, smaller children passed by, hooting, stomping around in big rubbery gleaming wellies, and jumping aggressively in the puddles and the pile of leaves, scattering them everywhere. I said, "Would you like me to put you back down on the pavement?" The wet creature clearly couldn't fly, nor could it breathe fire. It contented itself by glaring angrily at me from its orange-red eyes. I said, "Why don't you spend the day at our place? I'll keep you safe. Once you are dry, you can fly off. I'm not going to try and imprison you." It thought a moment. "And what do you want in return?" The words came out by themselves. I swear I have no conscious recollection of forming them. "Burn the school down, please." It nodded solemnly. I ran home and carefully laid the creature on my bed, where I knew it would be undisturbed for the rest of the day. I still blame myself for not specifying the time it should burn the school down. But then, how could I have predicted the exact moment that it would be ready to breathe flames and fly? I had left it that next morning looking still quite miserable and ill, with no apparent desire to leave my room. How could I have known that around 10 a.m., it would take wing and soar out of my room? The first I heard of it was during the second period. Kaylee pointed out of the window and exclaimed, "Firebird! Drakon!" I turned to look and glimpsed the creature swooping around the building, followed by a plume of silvery gray smoke. I still had no idea what it was planning to do then. Poor Kaylee. She was a special needs kid. I still see her curious round blue eyes, wondering at the universe, chewing her hair, in my dreams, my nightmares. The teacher said, "Eyes ahead, everyone." Those were the last normal words I heard. The fire alarms went off almost as the same time I saw the flames and heard the crackles. And then the screaming began and the heat slammed into me. I had had no idea how thoroughly such a creature, even a small one the size of pigeon, could burn things. I remember the smoke, the crashes and the screams. And then, almost before the time I had time to feel fully afraid, I passed out. I revived in hospital with third-degree burns down my face and body. I was so lucky, I was told solemnly, the only survivor of that horrific school fire which no one ever figured out how it got started. Except me. The curse of Ruth Hollow. The Grimstone family is cursed. A long time ago, when the Milners and Grimstones established the town of Ruth Hollow, a rivalry began between the two families. The two family heads ended their bickering by having a gun duel. In just 20 paces, it would be over. They both counted, matching their steps. 5 paces. 10 paces. 15 pa. A loud bang resounded through the empty forest space they had chosen to have their duel. No witnesses, just Abel Grimstone and a now-dead Lou Milner. Abel's hand shook as he put his gun away into the pocket of his jacket. Walking over to see if Lou was still alive, he saw the wide-eyed expression on his face. Abel had shot Lou dead without finishing all 20 paces. As blood began to pool under the body, Abel grabbed Lou by his ankles and started dragging him into the woods to bury him in an unmarked grave. He left Lou there and made his way home. When he returned to Ruth Hollow alone, causing an uproar in the Milner household, who had to admit defeat with Lou missing, the rightful mayor of the town would be Abel. That night, as the Grimstone family went to bed, Abel tossed and turned. He felt like someone was watching him from the room's far corner. The shape and size of this tall figure were undeniably the ghost of Lou Milner. Lou looked at him, blood dripping from the wound on his head. He was talking, but Abel couldn't hear what he was saying. The Grimstone family head knew what he was saying without words. "You killed me?" A chill went down his spine, and he turned over, facing his sleeping wife. Abel closed his eyes, trying to make himself go back to sleep. If he ignored it, Lou's ghost would go away, wouldn't it? Drew looked at his grandfather from across the dinner table, who flipped through the pages of his newspaper as he told this story. "You're joking. The Grimstone family can't be cursed." His grandfather lowered his paper. "Boy, do I look like I'm joking?" he said, the skin under his eyes prominently dark from lack of sleep. Drew shook his head. "No, sir." Charlie leaned back in his chair, addressing his grandson sternly. "It won't be long until you see him too. What our ancestor Abel did to Lou Milner was cruel, all because he wanted to be the leader of Ruth Hollow. It's why Abel's son moved the Grimstones out of that place, trying to escape it when he grew up. He should have known, though, that the curse would keep following. Has anyone tried breaking the curse?" Charlie folded his newspaper and put it aside, fiddling with his wedding ring. "Only once. My father traveled in search of the town of Ruth Hollow." He tapped his fingers on the table. There wasn't a town anymore, just empty, abandoned buildings and something else. Curious, Drew fixed his posture and looked at his grandfather curiously. What else was there? His grandfather exhaled, saying, "A memorial statue of Lou Milner." "So then someone found Lou?" Charlie nodded. His brother Shaw Milner knew something was up when Abel returned to Ruth Hollow alone. So, the year Abel passed away, he went looking for where the duel took place. Drew paled. "So it means that Shaw found the body of his brother Lou and brought it back to Ruth Hollow, getting the statue built and burying the remains under it." He thought to himself. It would explain why the curse was able to follow after Abel's son, even though he had moved the Grimstones to another town. Drew knew that soon after his grandfather and father were gone, he would be haunted by the ghost of Lou Milner. Is there really no way to put an end to this? His grandfather looked towards the window, lost in thought. "There might be, but I think it would be a shot in the dark." Whatever the suggestion was, Drew was willing to give it a try. Go to Ruth Hollow and burn the bones of Lou Milner. If the solution was so simple, why hadn't his great-grandfather dug up the bones and burned them then? Is there a reason why great-grandfather didn't burn the remains when he was there? He questioned his grandfather, who turned back to look at Drew. He was already seeing Lou's ghost, and since you haven't seen him yet, you might have a good chance at breaking this curse for good. Drew nodded and got the location for Ruth Hollow, making plans to travel. When he arrived at the ruins of Ruth Hollow, the entire place made his blood run cold. It was as if he could sense the lingering resentment that still hung onto this place. In the center was a tall, broken, and weathered statue, which he assumed was in memory of Lou Milner. Taking out a camping shovel from his travel pack, he began digging. Drew's shovel finally hit something hard. He knelt down, unearthing the rest with his hands. He found a tightly bound bundle wrapped in an old sheet. Pulling it up from the hole, Drew untied it and looked at the contents inside. Inside was fabric stained with patches of grime, frayed and weathered. Amidst the dirt-clung fabric were green and gray brittle bones that were once ivory. Drew picked it up, put it in a large pot, and placed it inside. Pouring flammable liquid onto the bundle, he lit a few matches and tossed them inside. Once it was done burning, he destroyed what he couldn't burn with. He hoped this would end the curse for his and the family's sake. As Drew left, he couldn't sense the lingering feeling he had once felt. Breathing out a sigh of relief, he got into his car and headed home. When Drew arrived home, he was greeted by his grandfather and father. "Welcome back." He exited his car and approached the two. "Hopefully it went well. Have you seen Lou?" The two shook their heads. "That's good. That means that burning the remains worked." Was the curse that haunted the Grimstones finally over? Drew was able to do something that his own great-grandfather was not able to do. As he was settling down for bed, there was a knock at his apartment door. A nagging feeling told him not to answer it, but his curiosity made him check it out. Looking through the peephole, Drew saw nothing out of the ordinary, nor did he see anyone. He slowly opened the door and saw a card on his welcome mat. Leaning down, Drew picked it up. The Eight of Swords. Drew swallowed the lump and looked around for who was responsible. Right behind him, he could feel something hovering over him, but he didn't dare turn around. "You can't escape, Grimstone." A clawed hand placed itself on his shoulder, gripping it inhumanly tight. "Not until every last one of you is dead." Drew was yanked inside, and the door slammed shut, muffling his terrifying screams behind it. Close by, a young woman peered around the corner with a satisfied smile. They may have ended Lou Milner's ghost, but the Milner family would continue wiping out the Grimstones in his place. Even if they had to make deals with demons to aid them. The Grimstone family will always be cursed.